So welcome to a new video. I'm going to do something a little bit different today. I haven't prepared a script or reading off anything. I'm just kind of freestyling this video. Today it's going to be a DCEU tier list. I mean, we're seeing the end of the DCEU now with the final film, Aquaman. So I think it is time to discuss where all these films rank in a list. The DCEU, I mean, has had some ups, some downs. It's had some pretty awful films, and the last few have been pretty shocking. I think we can all agree. So, I thought let's just kind of freestyle, go into each and every film, what I kind of think, and see where they end up. Now, obviously, you know, my rankings change almost on a daily basis, so I'm sure everyone's going to have lots of comments on where I put each film, because every film is someone's favourite, and I'm not a big fan of the Snyders films, so they might end up ranking quite lowly. So I imagine a lot of people won't be too happy with that. But I mean, I'm just doing this all off the cuff on how I'm feeling at this moment. It's not much deeper than that, to be honest. So I will put in the description where I talk about each film, so you can jump between. And I'm going to talk about all the films in release order instead of kind of doing Batman, Superman right at the end to try and make you watch the video for longer. So yeah, if you want to jump around, you can by doing that. So let's talk about the first film that was released back in 2013, Man of Steel. So Man of Steel, for me at the time, I didn't really like it. I thought it was a pretty poor interpretation of the character. I mean, this was a very, very controversial film at the time. I mean, probably not that controversial, but with what it was doing with the character of Superman, people didn't like. They didn't like the over-the-top destruction and just kind of the dark and gritty style of this film. It's obviously heavily influenced by the very successful Dark Knight films, and they were essentially trying to Dark Knight Superman. Now, there are some things that do work in this film, which I think the DCU could have built upon much better. Unfortunately, they didn't, and I think it then progressively got worse, and that's why we're in the situation we are now with the DCEU. So I think when I first saw it, I probably would have ranked it around about D or F, but I have started to like this film more and more recently, and I think it's a real shame we never really got a sequel. So I think I want to put it here, but I'm going to put it at B, because I think it is a solid start to the DCEU. There are things to build off of, and it's an origin story, and it very much reminds me of sort of Marvel Phase 1 films, where you just kind of show who your character is, and you can build upon there. You can see what works, what doesn't, what the fans want to see from the character, what don't they want to see. So I think it successfully lays the groundwork of the character, which I'm happy with. And it didn't try to build up a whole other universe, and does primarily focus on the character of Superman, which I do appreciate. So next up is obviously probably the most hotly debated film within the DCU, Batman vs Superman. Now, this is going to be the theatrical version I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the bloody extended cut, which was 30 minutes of extra footage, which explains everything we don't understand. It's stupid. Just make a good theatrical film. So, when I first saw this film, I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I thought it learned completely the wrong lessons from Man of Steel in regard to the over-the-top destruction from Man of Steel, and essentially, you know, we should be helping people and etc., etc. I think the film does well in setting up why kind of these characters don't like each other, in that Batman sees him as a threat, and Superman thinks Batman's going too far in how he deals with sort of street level crime. But for a film called Batman vs Superman that's nearly 2.5 hours long, the characters only fight once, which to me is absolutely ridiculous. The film wasn't built up enough. I mean, I saw a very interesting video the other day where someone explained how Godzilla vs Kong actually did Batman vs Superman better, where you kind of have 3 rounds of fighting between your main characters. And I mean, that's not the be-all, end-all. To be honest, I don't like how this film treats its audience by constantly explaining, oh, this is an unpopulated city, so don't worry, people aren't going to die, so this over-the-top action can happen and everyone's going to be okay. Ben Affleck is fantastic as the character, though, so I did really enjoy him, and I think it is a real shame that we didn't get more of this character. But overall, the film just falls flat. It's very mopey, takes itself far too seriously, and, not everything's got to be Marvel and have jokes, but it's just a bit depressing in the end. It doesn't do anything in explaining these characters. And the film is just basically one big trailer for the cinematic universe that we were promised and basically never got. Doesn't tell much of a story, but instead crams in 4 different comic book stories. We get the death of Superman, which really doesn't feel earned. You're 2 films into your cinematic universe and you're doing the death of one of your main characters for them to obviously only return in the very next film. So I think I'm gonna have to... it's either an F or a D for me. I think I'll put it at a D simply because if this film is on, I will watch it. Mostly just to kind of remember how bad it is. But that is better than most films that will rank as an F. If the films I will be ranking at F, I just will never watch again. But if Batman vs Superman is on, I will sit down and watch it. It does have some entertainment value, but overall the story just falls completely flat. So next up is the Suicide Squad. Well, not the Suicide Squad, the original Suicide Squad. This film is awful. I don't want to say too much about this. It's a complete Frankenstein of a film. Warner Brothers obviously really got cold feet on the Zack Snyder dark and gritty universe, which I kind of don't blame them for, but I don't think you should be at the end of production of your film, basically switching it up completely and trying to make it this, light-hearted, quippy film. The Suicide Squad, it just doesn't work in the title alone. It just feels like a very another generic superhero film, save the city from the bad guy. We don't really feel like these characters are villains in any way. We just keep getting told, hey, they're pretty bad guys and, how funny is this? And it's just an awful Frankenstein of a film. It's terrible. It's been chopped to pieces. It's 2-3 different visions all trying to fight one another. And it's just awful. And I will never watch it again. So for that, it gets an F. So now we move on to probably a much better film is Wonder Woman. This is probably the best DCEU film that ever came out. It's probably the best they really ever made. Gal Gadot, it's also her best performance as the character. I think she does it amazingly. She appears in a lot more films than you would think. You sort of, in this past year, she just seems to keep cameoing in these films, and she is pretty awful. But in this film, yeah, she's pretty good. They set up the character really well. It's a good origin story. I mean, this film really should have came before Batman vs Superman, and I'm really unsure as to why it didn't. But here we are. I mean, it's a very good film. Sets up the character well. It's their version of Captain America: First Avenger. Her and Chris Pine, Gal Gadot and Chris Pine are excellent together. So yeah, I really enjoy this film, and I will always watch it if I see that it's on. So this film is going to be our first S tier within the DCEU. So moving on to next is 2017's Justice League. So this is the original one that got released, not obviously Zack Snyder's one. Again, this is just... Well, actually, I want to talk about the first time I saw this film, because I came out of the cinema actually thinking it was actually okay. I thought, hey, they've kind of corrected some of their wrongs, and this is probably the best version of Superman we've got. Or maybe best version's not the... Well, actually, it probably is the best version. It's the best version. I know the mustache looks ridiculous, but still, I think he's a good version of Superman. Ignoring the mustache alone, he's very much closer to his comic book counterpart. He's full of hope, and I really do like that about the character. He's more upbeat. He's more about helping people, and yeah, kind of has a much sunnier outlook on life. So I do really enjoy that aspect. I remember coming out thinking, oh, maybe they've kind of sorted these things out. But then obviously over the years, as this film has digested more, you kind of realise it is just an awful Frankenstein of a film. Very much like Suicide Squad. Basically getting rid of Zack Snyder, bringing in Joss Whedon, and just basically dismantling the film. I don't like Zack Snyder's interpretation of these characters, but something I always say he has is a very clear, well, not clear vision, but he has a vision. He has a vision for what he wants to make, and I really enjoy seeing what someone else's interpretation is of something. You don't have to agree with that, but it's good to see kind of what other people see these characters as, and at least it's a clear vision. It's not just a made by numbers film, and I think that's why I don't rank his films as an F, because they have a lot of rewatchability about them compared to, say, some Marvel films which are very generic, which are probably better made films. I don't really want to rewatch them because there's just nothing really going on under the surface. You know, you look at like Ant-Man and the Wasp. Those films are just so generic. There's just nothing to them. They're fine. They're well-made films, but there's nothing creative going on. And Ben Affleck is awful in this film. You can tell that from the reshoots, he just did not want to be there. He'd had enough. And this was ultimately why he basically left the DCEU. It's not got any really real redeeming qualities. I won't ever watch it again when it's on TV. The only thing I like about it is I think they do kind of sort the character of Superman out. But looking at his upper lip, I just can't rank this higher than an F. So it's going to have to join Suicide Squad in that ranking. So after that came, actually, amazingly, I don't know how this happened, and maybe I will talk about it. I'll have to do some research on how this happened. But the most successful DCEU film, Aquaman. Now, I've only seen this once. I saw it at the cinema when it came out. I haven't watched it in preparation for this. I'm just kind of going on what my feelings and my memory is of this film. But I didn't really like it all that much. It's a bit corny. I don't think it looks very good. I think it's very flat. I think Atlantis looks good for the most part. Atlantis looks, from memory, looked pretty good. But I don't know. Amber Heard and Jason Momoa have zero chemistry. I don't buy into their relationship. The best part of this film is the villains. Ocean Master, played by Patrick Wilson, who did return for the sequel. And again, he's the best part of that film. I just don't know where I can really rank this, because I don't think it's got much rewatchability. I have no idea how it made $1 billion at the box office. Jason Momoa is fine as the character, definitely. I mean, this is tough. If I look at it, it's either a D or a C, and I think I'm going to be nice and put it in as a C. It's an okay-ish film. It's far too long. But, you know, it's a bit of fun. It's not particularly creative, but it's just a little bit of fun. So I can accept the film for that. So next up is Shazam. Now, Shazam is definitely one of the better films DCU made. They got David F. Sandberg in, who started out on YouTube making short horror films. And this was his first go at kind of big budget Hollywood filmmaking. So it's a really interesting story to see kind of how he went from, you know, small YouTube to some smaller horror films, and now he's making, you know, big budget Hollywood films. The film's got a lot of heart. It's very generic, you know. It's just kind of, you know, the story is, there's not much to it. It is just a bit of fun. I like the film overall. I think I forget the name of the person who plays Billy Batson, the child version, but he is very good. He does much of the heavy lifting of this film, so I was surprised that he's kind of front and center. I mean, I would say he's probably the main character, and then Zachary Levi is more of a supporting actor, and I think Zachary Levi does very well with what he's given in this film, and I think he plays that character quite well. So, yeah, I do really like this film. I don't think I have much interest of really watching it again, because it is quite generic. It's quite just, there's a bad guy, you know, we're going up against him, or we're a bit outmatched, or maybe we'll rally together because of the power of family. But hey, it's a well enough made film. So I'm going to put it at an A. So next up we have Birds of Prey. Now, Birds of Prey, I saw it at the cinema. It's the only other time I've seen it. And for the most part, I did enjoy this film. Margot Robbie is a very good Harley Quinn. She plays that character very well. And you can see that she really does enjoy playing that character. I think Ewan McGregor is very good in this film. He plays it off as quite corny, quite goofy, quite camp. But overall, I like his interpretation of Black Mask. A lot of fans don't, and a lot of fans don't like the interpretation of him and Victor Saz basically being lovers. But I think it works in the context of the film. The cast is very good. It's a very well cast film, very well made film. You can tell people are having a lot of fun with it. So I really enjoy it. I definitely watch it again. So I'm going to put it in at an A because I really enjoy this film. I think it's well made. It didn't do super well at the box office, but it's just a well made film. You can tell everyone's having fun, and yeah, I like it. So next up is Wonder Woman 84. God, this wasn't this was pretty poor. It was a real shame that this was so bad, considering that the first Wonder Woman film is seen as kind of like the DCU's best film. It's the one they finally got right, and you felt that it was like, right, so they finally got a character that they can build this franchise upon. And they kind of fumbled it completely with this sequel. People had really high hopes. I had really high hopes for it. And it's just weird, the whole Steve Trevor coming back scenario. It's just very, very bizarre. I just really do not like it. It's very awkward. And the film could have asked some better questions of their characters when obviously they basically ruin a guy's life to make him into Steve Trevor, and they just spend the film, laughing at this guy, which is really odd. So yeah, it's just a lot of missed opportunities. I felt, the villains aren't very good. You've got Pedro Pascal and Kristen Wiig, and there's just nothing to do with their villains, and it's just, Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor just running around together. It's just not doing much. There's just no substance there, and I really will never watch it again. So unfortunately, I'll have to put it around about a D. So next up is probably one of the most famous DCEU films, and that's Zack Snyder's Justice League. Obviously, there was just a huge hype to get this film released, and it was very toxic at times. To be honest, I don't think his films have been very good within the DCU. There's been some, good points within the films, but a lot of bad points. And I think what Zack Snyder struggles with is building off what's working. I think really with this franchise filmmaking, you need to ignore what went wrong. Don't try and correct it. Just build upon what's going right. And I think that's something Marvel did really, really well. Instead of just lingering, talking about, that didn't go bad, but here's our explanation. You should just build upon the positives and just create characters like that. People very quickly forget kind of what came before if you're, rounding out these characters. But Zack Snyder's Justice League, to be honest, I was one of the naysayers. I didn't think it would be very different. I didn't think it would be a particularly good cut of the film, in all honesty. I do have a problem with it being 4 hours long. And it is funny that, we kind of waited so long for a cut of this film that I kind of want another cut of the film. I'd like a theatrical cut. I mean, a 4 hour long film, it's just ridiculous. He wouldn't release it. The way the film has been released, he would not have released this in cinemas. He has just, he has rewarded the fans for backing him and said, here's everything. It's basically everything he did. It's everything he shot. There was nothing really left on the cutting room floor, I think, except for maybe a cameo by Green Lantern. But I would like a version to be made that was more of a theatrical version. The film he would have released in cinemas, because 4 hours would not have cut it. So someone's really got to do, a 2.5 hour to a 3 hour cut. The film is much better than Justice League. I was surprised by how much better. I did not realize kind of how much Warner Brothers kind of tore apart his original film. But this film is way better than what they released. I have no idea why they felt the need to do what they did. This film is, I think, this is probably his best film he's made for the DCEU. It's too long. It's far too long. But it is good. And I do really enjoy it. And I will watch it again. Not in a sit down for 4 hours, but I will always watch clips and whatnot of this film. And I think this is the version we really should have got. So for that, I think it's a B or an A. I'm going to be nice. I'm going to say an A because I think it's nice that Zack Snyder got his version out there, and I think it is a real win for filmmakers for him to be able to release this in the way he did. Next up is James Gunn, the new head of the DCEU, and it's The Suicide Squad, the kind of reboot sequel to 2016 Suicide Squad, and I love this film. I think this is fantastic. This is exactly how you do the Suicide Squad. Suicide Squad aren't about sort of saving the world and, you know, helping the common man and kind of how the first one was. The first one just basically became a superhero team up. This film really, it's about, the Suicide Squad is about doing dark, gritty, horrible missions. They're basically cover-up agents for the American government. If the American government have done something bad, they don't want it getting out. They need an expendable force. You know, so it's not in the Suicide Squad's interest to release secrets about the government if they're getting time off their sentence or they're going to become free men. What's there to gain for them releasing information? So they need expendable forces. And so I think it done that really well. The performances are fantastic. Idris Elba's very good. John Cena as Peacemaker is probably the best part of this film, or maybe King Shark. I haven't seen it in a while, but I'll always watch it when it is on. It is a really good film. It's very creative. I do really love James Gunn's films. I know it didn't do very well at the box office, but apparently it was quite a big hit on HBO Max, which is why Warner Brothers kind of gave the reins of the DCU to James Gunn. Overall, I just think this film gets the Suicide Squad right. I just really like it. I think the action is really fantastic. I think everyone gets their chance to shine. It's just a very good film. And I think for that, it's going into the S tier, which is probably going to be the last film that makes it into the S tier. We have Peacemaker on here. Now, Peacemaker was a TV show that basically came from the Suicide Squad. They had planned to kill off Peacemaker, but I think at the last minute, they shoved the post-credits in to bring John Cena back because he was so fantastic. It's a really good TV show. I enjoy it. It's not too much is really going on with it, but it's just a good bit of fun. I've seen it once through. I enjoyed it. It can go to B. So this is the film that was going to reset the DCEU. This was kind of Dwayne Johnson's child of God knows how many years. About 12 years, I think it took him to make this film. This was kind of being billed as, this was kind of going to reset the DCU. They're going to bring back Henry Cavill. There's loads to come. They're going to reset this whole nonsense going on DCU, and they're going to tell new stories. And Dwayne Johnson, the biggest movie star in the world, he's going to be front and center. He's the savior of the DCEU. There's so much ego going on with this film in that how Dwayne Johnson has kind of set it all up. You know, I think they knew the film wasn't doing too well when they revealed before it was released that Henry Cavill was going to be in it. And then obviously, I think about a week after it was released, even Henry Cavill put out a Instagram post to say, yep, I'm in the film, and the small things, it's a small piece of things to come, you know, hinting at that he is back, he's going to be the character, he's going to fight Black Adam, and here we go, this is DCEU 2.0, and, you know, they're going to try for another franchise. The film is awful. In my opinion, the film is terrible. It feels like a superhero film made from 2006. It's so generic and they're trying to frame this character as this absolute badass, and he's not really a hero. He's more of a villain. He kills people. But all he's doing is just beating up faceless thugs, and so many of our heroes have done that. I'm not saying it's right, but you're not giving us anything different of what you do with this sort of anti-hero. Deadpool's more of an anti-hero because, he'll kill someone brutally. Deadpool is a character in that he doesn't care who he's working for. He's a mercenary. He will side with bad guys or he'll side with heroes. It's whatever is advantageous. Is that how you say it? I think it is. I don't know. Advantageous for him at the time. And this character, if he wasn't constantly saying, I'm no hero, you would think he's just a hero just because he's going around, he's stopping the gang that's, being framed as the bad guys in this. He's going around stopping them. I know he is killing these people, but it's not exactly brutal. He's just throwing them up in the air. I know they're obviously dying, but we've seen this countless times from superheroes. The faceless henchmen, you can do whatever you like with it. I mean, Star Wars, they kill so many stormtroopers. It's almost on genocide levels. So for him to frame himself as, he's not a hero, it's just really boring. And the film just has nothing to say. It's basically a shit remake of Terminator 2. I really hate this film. It's incredible this film kind of got made in the way it is. It's a film that feels 15 years old. It's so generic. I just can't believe it got through, because this seems to be probably the last film where Warner Brothers were trying. They were saying, let's get this universe going. Let's, send it into reshoots, post-production. Let's try and sort the film out and create something that will get this universe going. Because I think the 4 films that come after this basically had no reshoots. They just kind of threw the film out there. Because they were done with this, they knew they were rebooting it. So let's just move on and let's not put any more money into it. Let's release as is. So I'm amazed this film got released and made in the rendition that we got, because it is awful. So I'm gonna put it at, it's an F or a D, which I'm gonna put a D because it's not like Suicide Squad and Justice League, which is just, awful Frankenstein films, which just are appalling. At least they tried to make something. There are some good characters in it. I like Pierce Brosnan as Dr. Fate. That's about it. But at least they tried to make something. It's not grievous like the Suicide Squad and Justice League. At least there was kind of a vision there, and it's not a pulled apart film. Next up is Shazam. I can't remember what the part was. Shazam, Fury of the Gods. I think that's what it's called. This is where James Gunn has come forward, said, I'm gonna now do the DCEU. So let's just kind of throw these films out there. No marketing. Let's not do any reshoots. Let's just release as is. And these 4 films are pretty poor, except for maybe one, which you'll find out in a bit. It's not The Flash. I don't like it. There's a weird love story between Billy's friend and Rachel Zegler from West Side Story. It's, for some reason, the film basically put Zachary Levi front and center, because I imagine they thought he was the reason the first film did pretty okay. The film is just rubbish. The villains are just nothing. There's some good horror aspects, which David F. Sandberg does kind of squeeze into his films. There does feel like, I don't know, if perhaps there was some reshoots, they could have salvaged maybe a bit of a better film out of this. But it feels very incomplete. There's just nothing really going on. Zachary Levi's not very good in this film. I can't imagine he'll return as the character. So for that, I'm going to put this film at a D. So next up is The Flash. Now, The Flash was billed as the film. This would reset the DCU, and this would kind of give us an inkling into where we were going. Why 2 more DCEU films got released after this, I have no idea. This film would work a lot better if it was released right at the end, because at least it kind of makes sense at where everything is. And you could just say, you know, the Aquaman and Blue Beetle came before this, and then the Flash happened. He's in this. He's ruined the universe, and yeah, it's. I mean, everyone's seen kind of the visual effects are just god awful. They've tried to play it off as saying it's meant to look this way, which is complete and utter bollocks. I think Ezra Miller is actually okay as the character. I think the performances are okay, and I think where they do the body double, that visual effect actually works quite well, surprisingly. And I think for the first 2 acts, this film is actually okay. This film's fine. It's generic. It's a bit of fun though, and it had me laughing at points. And you know, I didn't mind it. But then it completely falls apart in the 3rd act, because obviously this film was getting made where Warner Bros. Didn't really know what they were doing with this universe. They didn't know if they were scrapping it completely, if they were bringing back Ben Affleck and Henry Cavill, if Michael Keaton was becoming essentially their Nick Fury. So I think I read they filmed about 3 different endings for this film, and went with an ending they filmed in January, and considering this film was released in March, it's pretty crazy, to be honest. But you can tell they kind of gave up with the film. It's obviously been rushed, and this is why it kind of looks like it does, because that 3rd act is just awful. It doesn't make any sense. But, you know, the first 2 acts I do actually enjoy. I know everyone rips into kind of how it looks at the end and how awful it does look, but that's not a fault of the director. It's not a fault of the visual artist, because they've obviously not been given the time to complete the visual effects for this film. So, for that, I mean, amazing. I think I'll give it a C. Because the first 2 acts are fine. It does look like a PlayStation cutscene, that final battle. They seriously underutilized Michael Keaton as Batman, but this film went through so many different problems, you know, concerning its main star, concerning director changes, and then obviously hierarchy changes with Warner Brothers. It's amazing the film is as good as it is. I'm not saying it's good, but it's amazing that it's not at the level of Suicide Squad or Justice League. It's a passable film. I can imagine children quite enjoying this film. So I'll put a C, because it doesn't hurt. I don't want to say don't hurt the eyes, but it's fine. It's absolutely fine if you kind of ignore the last third. So yeah. Next up is Blue Beetle. Now, Blue Beetle is probably the best film DCEU released last year. I know I've said this, it's a little bit of fun. It's sensationally generic. If you want to go in, you just want to see an origin story that you've seen God knows how many times, some solid performances, some decent special effects, then this is the film for you. It's not a badly made film. It's got a plot that you have seen a million times before, but it's fine. The performances are good. I really hope, I'm not going to try and pronounce the main actor's name. He's in the Karate Kid, Cobra Kai. Fantastic in that. He's fantastic in this. The whole supporting cast are very good. I think even the villain is solid. I'd like to see more of that villain, really. But overall, the film is fine. I have no interest in watching this film again, but it's just very generic. It's fine. It's well made. It's A to B film. It shut your brain off. It's fine. And for that, it gets a B. So, last and you can say least, but last in the DCEU, this is where it all ended, Aquaman 2. It's bad. It's not a good film. The action sequences are just nothing. It's got half decent performances from Jason Momoa. I think he was completely miscast as Aquaman, but they cast him as Aquaman because he becomes such a joke that they kind of needed the tough guy to take over the role when, this ain't your grandpappy, he's Aquaman, this guy's tough, he's got tattoos and long hair and a beard. Yeah, great. He's still miscast as this character. He does his best of it. Patrick Wilson, of course, is the best part of this film as Ocean Master. It's a real shame Willem Dafoe didn't come back, because I always like a film with Willem Dafoe. The CGI is not great. Again, I feel like this kind of falls into the Shazam and Flash categories of, I think there's a film in here. There's an okay-ish film in here, but obviously they've down their tools. Warner Brothers aren't interested in kind of salvaging these films. Why pump more money in? Just let it fall by the wayside. You're never going to get your money back. It's too much of a risk to pump, another 20, 30, $40 million into this to kind of fixing the issues or building upon points of what you found works in the film. So just kind of release as is. It's a real shame it kind of ended with a complete whimper. I have no idea where this leaves us with the DCEU and where the DCEU jumps in. It's completely bizarre. It's very confusing. This is just, I don't know. It's not a good film. And I'm going to put it in a D. So there you go. There's a tier list of the DCEU. We will get our first DCU property this year, which I believe is Creature Commandos, which is a animated show. But yeah, that is a DCU tier list. So I hope you enjoyed this. This has just been me kind of freestyling it. I had nothing prepared, which you could probably tell. And I've kind of just said this all off the cuff. And I can guarantee you tomorrow, I will completely change my mind on all of these rankings. But yeah, let me know what you think of these rankings. And if you agree, I'm sure you don't. And tell me what you would have ranked each film within the DCEU.